Welcome back to Social Pulse Podcast Retail Edition, where we're digging into the challenges, successes, and stories of social media community professionals in the industry, just like you. Subscribe to gain valuable insights that you'll be able to apply to your own work and social presence from each and every episode. Now, social media marketing has come a long way. Mixed reality, artificial intelligence, wearables, and that's just the last 3 months. For retail marketers, developments like these are not just fads, they're challenges to be met, understood, and potentially leveraged as opportunities. But how do you know what new features or apps should be leaned into and which ones should be ignored? How do you not only keep up with all the developments to Facebook and the rest of Meta's family of apps, but position yourself to actually come out ahead? That's exactly what Mari Smith is going to talk to us about. Often referred to as the Queen of Facebook, Mari Smith is widely known as the premier Facebook marketing expert and a top social media thought leader. Forbes describes Mari as the preeminent Facebook expert. Even Facebook asks for her help. IBM named Mari as one of 7 women that are shaping digital marketing. She's an in-demand keynote speaker, dynamic live webinar host, savvy corporate social media strategist and trainer, and popular brand ambassador, and someone I've personally turned to for years as a voice of reason when it comes to Facebook and Meta. Hey, Mari, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much, Mike. I am honored to be here. Thank you for that lovely introduction.
Absolutely. So thrilled to have you here. Let's dive right into today's topic, how
Mhm.
retail marketers can keep up with all the changes in social media overall and Facebook and the rest of Meta's family of apps specifically, because there's a lot going on right now. If you're a retail social media manager today, how do you manage all this information?
Wow. Yeah, I would say the number one key is curation. Be really, really good, extremely good at curating. Now, you're like, okay, Mario, but that means I have to go to all these sources and cherry pick. But you could have identified trusted sources that are going to do the curation for you. Even so, like for example, you might subscribe to a newsletter that summarizes all the social media updates for you and puts their spin on it. I really encourage social media managers to have their own spin, to be able to interpret what's happening in the landscape. And I specialize mostly in Facebook, Meta platforms, but to be able to put your own interpretation, go, okay, I see this update. Now, how does this affect me? How does this affect my brand that I work for, my role? Is this something I really need to pay attention to? So maybe you have like a favorites list on Facebook or Instagram, top people that you follow. I absolutely recommend, of course, subscribing to select newsletters. You've got certain podcasts. I love that you're doing this podcast here, Mike, and maybe even joining a social media training a group or club. I know like Social Media Examiner has their society. For me, for example, right now with AI and specifically how generative AI and AI developments in general are impacting the world of social media and marketers. I really love to follow Paul Raitzer, the CEO and founder of the Marketing AI Institute, and he has the Artificial Intelligence podcast, Paul Raitzer, Mike Kaput. And then maybe, I was thinking about this, and if it makes sense in your business and your company, maybe there's an internal role. It might be part of the social media manager's job, but internal role would be someone whose sole job is to be a chief curator, a chief summarizer, someone who does consume huge amounts of news and updates and follows all of these leaders and then distills that into summaries, extracting only what needs to be shared with you and impacting your job as a retail social media manager. And then, of course, we were just talking about AI, so I would interject right in here. You may find that you can turn to a lot of AI tools to provide it certain sources of trusted information, maybe Google Gemini or ChatGPT, and train those tools to read sources of news and then provide you with summaries.
That's fantastic. I do believe that someday, very, very soon, we'll simply be able to tell AI who we are, the kinds of things that we're interested in, and the AIs are going to deliver that kind of information to us. And Paul and Mike are a fantastic recommendation. I listen to them personally. I've been listening to them this week. Word of warning and caution to those of you listening to me right now. Their podcast episodes are 2 to 3 times longer than mine. They've got a lot to unpack every single week with AI news. This week was Facebook with Meta AI, and their episode, I think, was an hour and a half long.
Yeah,
So
and they're
buckle up,
doing a
kids.
second one.
They're doing a second one. You're right, because there was just so much going on this week. And I appreciate because I relate to it so well, your advice about following newsletters. I wake up every
Yeah.
morning to 6 or 8 newsletters, some marketing, some general news and that sort of thing, and that's my stable every day. But I
Mm.
also have to say, Mara, you were very humble and not talking about yourself. So those of you listening, and we'll get to Mari, where to follow her in a minute, but you've got to follow Mari because curating what's happening today in Facebook and Meta overall, this is Mari's superpower.
Mm.
So follow her, join her group. Again, we'll have all those links and we'll talk about it more in a little bit because she's going to help you know what you should be paying attention to. But that leads me to my next question, Mari.
Mhm.
What shouldn't we be paying attention to? Because there's a lot that does happen with the apps, with the networks, some of its trends, some of its actual features and developments. Are there aspects of Facebook or social media overall that we should steer clear from or avoid paying too much attention to?
Oh, okay. I love this question because, and I won't name names. There are definitely folks in the social media industry who that is their specialty to let you know about every nuance.
Mm.
Oh my God, this button moved from here to here. Oh my God, this right? It's like, who cares? It's like I just don't have time to wade through all of those kinds of updates. And so I always have this kind of mantra is like, okay, how will this impact generating more business for me, for my company, for my brand, right? Does this update, this change, this new feature help me to drive more leads, to generate more leads and drive more sales? So generally speaking, I would say most social media managers don't necessarily have to pay attention to every single little nuance, every technical or even aesthetic change. It doesn't have to be at the top of your mind on a daily basis. You can peek in maybe once a week and have a quick skim on some of those newsletters or people that really, posting updates every few minutes. And but otherwise, and I thank you for mentioning following me because that is always something I pride myself on for 17 years now. I can hardly believe it. Specialized in Facebook marketing since 2007 is that I love to be the voice of reason, the voice of calm, and everybody's like freaking out about something, or even often if everyone's zigging, I like to come along and zag. And you don't have to follow the mainstream. What if you think outside the box here? What if we read between the lines and say, okay, what exactly is Mark Zuckerberg saying here? What exactly is Meta or Facebook doing with this change? Is this really going to be pivotal in impacting your business and how you do your job? So those are the things to think about.
So, in other words, we shouldn't freak out because the stickers moved and got this jumbled look. We shouldn't panic about that.
It's like, whatever.
For those of you listening who maybe don't know, that was a recent change to Instagram. When you went to add a sticker to a story, the sticker buttons moved, and there was a lot of panic among some of the subset people in the industry. And that's a perfect example, I think, of the kind of
Yeah.
thing that we want to avoid. We want to avoid worrying about that. We want to avoid letting that kind of drama and panic into our lives. And to your
Mhm.
point, focus on the things that are going to actually move the needle for the
Yeah.
business. And one of those things in particular is AI. AI is not a
Mm.
fad. It's not going away. It is here. It is. I don't want to go so far as to say it's coming for our jobs. It's not, but we do need to have a far deeper understanding of how AI is going to impact our jobs, our roles, our industry. And we've had some big news yet just this week with Meta AI and how that's being integrated into all of Meta's apps, right? It's
Mhm.
basically Meta's version of ChatGPT or Gemini. What do you
Mhm.
think that means to marketers and retailers today? Let me hear your spin on that, that voice of reason when it comes to Meta AI.
Well, it's been interesting because I've been watching and paying attention very closely to Mark Zuckerberg. I believe it was February last year that he declared Meta has a turbocharged focus on AI, and then it was later that year, last year, that he said that Meta was focused on building a world-class AI assistant for basically everyone. And then he went to list off, creators, businesses, developers, because the Llama 3 is open source. Developers can build on that. That's great. There's different arguments for open source versus not. But the thing is, it's super early days yet. However, Meta being a $1 trillion company, we've got to pay attention to what they're doing. And circle back to Paul Reitzer's podcast just this week. he was even using the words like blown away. He was blown away by
Yeah.
this new feature that Meta brought out. It used to be called Imagine with Meta AI. It was a standalone text to image generator. Now that's all just baked into the Meta AI tool, which you can access in certain countries. There's over a dozen English-speaking countries now outside the US. If you got folks around the world listen to this podcast, I predict that the Meta AI will roll out pretty promptly to most countries. And so now you can go to Messenger search bar, Instagram direct inside the inbox search bar, and then WhatsApp search bar or message bar. And you can start interacting with it. You can ask any kinds of questions under the sun, translate something, come up with an idea, outline an article, news, whatever you want. You're interacting with this chat assistant just the same you would with ChatGPT. And then on the image side, the thing that Paul Ratzer said that he was blown away by is the real time. So if you start your prompt with the word imagine, the image just pops right up. And as you're typing, the keystrokes are typing, you're putting in some different words. Imagine a cat, who's wearing a unicorn hat, is floating in the clouds, or whatever you're going. Just the minute you're typing the keystrokes, it's popping up in front of you. And so, yeah, there's no question that Mark Zuckerberg and team are investing billions, tens of billions it is, into creating the most robust AI infrastructure on the planet. Now, here's the thing that we want to pay attention to as marketers. I think by now, most marketers, social media managers, are familiar with what generative AI even means, right? You go to whatever favorite tool of choice, you punch in a prompt, and it generates content, where it's text or image. Now you've got video with OpenAI's Sora. Before long, I'm sure Meta AI will have us doing video, but also looking a little bit further ahead on the horizon, what Meta, Zuckerberg is also building with tens of billions is this artificial general intelligence, AGI. Eventually, robots will have this autonomous self-control. They'll basically be sentient beings with self-awareness, which I'm sorry, that kind of like creeps me out a bit. I don't know, like just know that that's where all this is heading. And keep bearing in mind that Zuckerberg, maybe from the day he was born, I don't know, but certainly the day he started Facebook in 2004, 20 years ago now, he's been obsessed with domination. Like in the early days, he used to just chant that in the office. So there was a tweet went by at Burkov. I don't know who this is, but Mike Capote had mentioned it on the podcast. And he said that Zuckerberg potentially undermines competitors to the point of destruction. Whoa. Yeah. And that's true. So at some point, as marketers, we might be going, oh my gosh, well, Meta AI is baked into all these tools I'm using anyway. Certainly the apps, I can generate images, animate, just press a button and it animates it. It's real time. I can do all this. It's baked into the apps. And sooner or later, my predictions, we're going to see this Meta AI will be absolutely baked into Meta Business Suite and then Meta Ads Manager. So now you've got everything you need at your fingertips. You won't really need to leave the apps to go generate your content. Where I'm personally quite excited about that will be coming at some point is the ability to use AI to really drill in and analyze our audiences and to create much higher performing ads, not just with the content, the assets, the media, but really understanding and segmenting the audience and then broadening and reaching a wider audience as a result of the integration of AI.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And I'm glad you mentioned Paul's podcast specifically. We'll link to that because you're absolutely right. It was something they talked about extensively from a lot of different perspectives. One of which that I want to touch on is, Mark Zuckerberg's motivation. This is not new, folks. You should not have any illusion that this is kind of a new phenomenon here. His favorite quote was Carthago delenda est, which Carthage means Carthage must be destroyed. And he was quoting that back when Google Plus was one of their primary competitors. I wrote about this in Mark Schaefer's blog. I'll link to that in the show notes so you guys can get a little bit of history there. This is kind of what I do with social media is I pay attention to how things have gone and how they relate to what's happening today. You all need to understand that Meta AI is free and it does everything that the paid versions of ChatGPT and Gemini do. This is presumably, obviously, Mark Zuckerberg has not said this, but those of us watching are seeing this as his approach. His strategy is let's give this away for free to billions, hook them on it, and then, like you said, roll out some additional features and get them using them on our platforms. But to your point, some of the stuff is truly amazing. The real-time image creation, this, folks, is something that definitely you can be using as marketers. I use AI generated images now throughout my blog, and I'm using Dustin Stout's tool Magi, which integrates with
Mm.
DALL-E 3 and
Mhm.
Midjourney, because it's just an easier interface. I can go in there and I can say, I want a bear wearing human clothes and a fedora, because I wear fedora hats, in a Star Wars setting, and then I tell it that he's doing something. He's analyzing Instagram analytics or something, and poof, it spits out a bear in this costume, in this environment, doing something interesting. But the difference is I can't change that image,
Mm.
right? Whatever it
Mhm.
is, that's it. If I want a new image, I have to do a new prompt or hit it again or something like that. I can't hit backspace and change the words and have it generating real time like Meta AI is. So that's super fascinating to me. And
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought up Sora. There's all these amazing developments, and really within 2 to 4 years, we're going to see just incredible, mind blowing, massive shifts. I think
Mm.
in how we live, how we work, how all these things interchange. But today, I feel like we have a lot of social media marketers. They're leaning in on AI to generate what I would consider to be very mediocre content.
Mm. Mm.
How do you think social media managers can stand out today, particularly on retail, while they're using these tools?
Yeah, I really am deeply concerned about the overuse of generative AI content. I call it synthetic media. So as everybody's scrolling through their feeds, whichever social platform, it's becoming more and more difficult to discern, to truly use one's best judgment. Is this a real photo? Is this a real image? Or is this being mocked up to pretend like it's a real image? And so what I'm seeing massively across the board, all these sites, social channels, is an erosion of trust, a very slow burn, an erosion of trust where I've seen it happen to my own self. You put your thumb hovering over the reaction button, you're about to do a wow or a heart or a like, and you're like, wait a minute, is this even real? For example, we just had the big solar eclipse a few weeks ago here, and it was a big deal in the States. I have never seen so many fake images in my feed about one particular topic. There was one I saw that was in a beautiful shot over Niagara Falls, and it had 7,000 shares. And as I looked closely, some of the dimensions were a little off. And I peeked into the comments, and some people were pushing back and going, "Yeah, I don't think this is real." And sure enough, it wasn't real. I saw many like that. So I believe that the way to stand out amongst this cacophony of synthetic media content is to lean more, even more so, into the human, personalized, real touch, leveling up that, building community, going the extra mile, making people feel special and important and included. Maybe it's time your retail business sent more personal notes, handwritten notes in the mail. What if you did something bizarre and picked up the phone and called people? Do something unexpected, because it's fiercely competitive out there. Absolutely using people's first names, hopping into the DMs when you can. Wonderful call to action is have people direct message you. Now, depending on the size of your business that you work with, imagine that a lot of retailers here would deploy the use of a chatbot, which is a great call to action, a great tool to be using in Instagram in particular, because it's more difficult to put links there, except in stories. You put links in your stories. But encouraging people to DM you, and you've got a chatbot to at least initiate the qualifying of a prospect, and then directing them to a specific space on your website, perhaps to make a purchase, but always able to jump in there with the real human engagement. I know Agorapulse does such a good job with that, with the amalgamated and aggregated social DM box. A quick example I want to give, Mike, is I was recently shopping and thought this would be a great retail example. I was recently shopping, which I love to do online. And I saw there's a company called The Cushion Lab, and I saw them pillows. I was first attracted to their pillows. They have this pillow called the Deep Sleep pillow, and I'm all for doing whatever I can to have the best sleep ever. And I found them through like a Facebook ad a few months ago, and I did order the Deep Sleep pillow, which I love, and I got the travel version of it as well. Well, of course, they keep enticing me to come back. Hey, you bought once, can we get you to buy some more things? We got more than pillows, And so I ended up getting these sheets, these beautiful like bamboo, microbial, whatever they are sheets. And I was checking out, and I've done my checkout thing. Of course, they do the bundles, and it's really beautifully done. And I saw this little incentive. Now, this isn't necessarily a personal touch, but I thought it was brilliant because I saw this little incentivization pop up, and it's a little countdown timer on it. It says, "Hey, Mari, I don't think it used my name, but it's like, hey, you can, if you order anything else within the next 10 minutes, you can get 10% off." Now, that's not social, but I just thought, what a cool incentive. It was unexpected and something I'm likely to talk to my friends about. And here I am talking to you about it on your retail podcast. It's just like
Right.
those little teeny things make a big difference.
Yeah, I think that's so true. That personalization, that human touch. I think live video. We're going to see even
Yes.
more live video from the brands who truly want to connect
Yeah.
with their audiences. I'm thinking about doing more live videos. I do these podcasts that are pre-recorded, even my webinars. They're live, but they're not streamed to social media. And I've been trying to
Mm.
think about internally in the team, what can we do that is a little more human, a little more personal, and that's
Mm.
those are all great examples, folks. We're
Mm.
talking with Mari Smith about all the developments with Facebook and Meta and how to keep up, particularly with respect to AI. Now, at Agorapulse, we too are constantly looking for ways to integrate AI to help you be more effective and efficient. Here's how.
Hey there, Daryl Braille, Chief Marketing Officer here at Agorapulse, the industry's best social media management platform. I gotta tell you, I love AI. Why? I don't view it as a threat. Rather, it makes me better. It's a colleague. It's a collaborator. Let's say I do a social media post, but you know what? I'm a little long-winded. I want it shorter. Maybe I want it longer. Maybe I want it punchier, more assertive, more inspirational, more funny. That's what our writing assistant does. Check it out, agorapulse.com.
So, Mari, I kind of hinted at this earlier, but I think a lot of marketers today are rightly, I think, concerned about the future of social media and online marketing. Where do you see Facebook marketing specifically heading in the next few years?
Gosh. Well, there's no question we're going to see a massive increase in even more generated AI generated synthetic content media. It's all going to become really automated. At the same time, that could also be very homogenized. And, AI has a long way to go in terms of getting people more realistic. So, and I mentioned earlier about trust eroding. I've seen even just some businesses and marketers just say, that's it, we're just going to give up and stop using Facebook altogether. I've seen that over the past year or so because it's just gotten more and more challenging on Facebook. And also because reach is so low. And then you've got the AI powered discovery engine, which pushes Meta says 20%. I actually think it's way more than 20%, but I think they're just being conservative. Of the content that people see in their feeds is from unconnected sources. So it's from people and pages groups even that you don't follow, you've never heard of, and that gets pushed into your feeds in the hopes that you're going to engage with it. Uh, from a user standpoint, it can be quite frustrating because you're like, where's all this my friends? Where's the pages I have signed up to follow? At the same time, Meta has stated it is increasing time on site, maybe 6 or 7% on both Facebook and Instagram. But I feel that we need to revisit what social media success even is. I've been beating this drum now for several years, not just the influence of AI. And I'm here to say that, it's not necessarily the vanity metrics of more and more and more. Just let's get more followers and get a viral reel, a viral TikTok video, get more engagement. And I'll say, none of that actually pays the bills. It's good and it's important. And depending on the size of your brand, you want to have some decent content and engagement going on. But I'd also rather see businesses focusing on perhaps building a community, if that's correct for you, like Canva, for example. Canva's user group in Facebook is really huge, and they're quite engaged in there, and it's got a lovely culture. And so just fostering those genuine relationships, and I like to say create a loyal following of people that love you and love to buy from you. So it's not just about, okay, hey, our stats are up. Well, which stats? We got more likes. Okay, well, what about did that lead to generating more prospects and sales? And it's just not about fire hosing and blasting everyone with more and more content. Going down the path a year or two, there's no question that Facebook marketing, especially on the ad side, will be more automated. Just pressing a few buttons, mentioned earlier, like I'm envisioning being able to go into Meta Business Suite, having your clear prompts, knowing what's possible, knowing, staying within the confines of what you want to create for your brand, and spitting out this content, the written, the video, the text, the audio, all the above, image, of course, and getting it all lined up and just being able to schedule it. And then, of course, you're going to go back and do your engagement. And then one area, as I mentioned earlier, too, is this, I really am excited to see what's happening on the ad side, because keep in mind, I've said this for 15 years. Well, ever since Facebook introduced the whole advertising side of the business, there is no more granular content, audience that you can target with your ad dollars than through Meta platforms, because they know an inordinate amount of data points about every single user. And there's billions, 3 point whatever, it's almost 4 billion across all the apps. And so can you imagine being able to have your ad campaigns being, I'm calling it ultra automated. Obviously, you got to oversee it a bit. Don't let the machines get too carried away. But ultra automated to the point the sales are just pouring in without a whole lot of oversight. Because to me, that's a brilliant use of AI and automation.
Those are fascinating insights, and I couldn't agree more with the point you made earlier, which is that businesses are looking at the wrong metrics too often.
Mhm.
They're paying
Mhm.
attention to likes, to new followers, and those things are okay. And there are some instances where we do want to pay attention to those. We talked about that in the previous episode with Jen Herman on Instagram about which metrics were really
Mm.
good for indicating whether you're doing well on that particular platform. But I'm always curious, how do we measure the actual business impact? Because like you said,
Mm.
aren't paying the bills. How do we measure, or how do you measure the business impact of social media?
Mm, yeah, it's definitely up to each business. I would say it comes down to leads and sales ultimately. Maybe I would say like a decade ago, if you're responsible for analyzing metrics and you go to the CEO or CTO or yeah, then and you're saying, okay, hey, look, our social's up. But the CMO, the marketing officer, and certainly the financial officer is like, well, okay, well, how did that result in actual leads and sales? And so it just depends. I know for me, you're asking about me. For me, I do have a focus on building up what I call relationship equity. So I'm not always in sales mode. I'm always in relationship building mode, and I love to be able to have this seamless presence when people see me just sharing my life or sharing updates, or I'm speaking at this event, or I'm on this podcast, and oh, I'm teaching this course, and oh, here's where to sign up. It's like the same style. Gosh, I'm just reminding myself of a long time ago, maybe 15 years ago. I was in a mastermind, and one of my fellow members says to me, Mari, I've been analyzing your tweets. I don't do much with Twitter these days, but I've X'd out X. But he's like, oh, I've studied your tweets. I've read a little analysis and I've figured out your formula. And I don't remember the exact formula, but let's say it was like, you're like 57% personal and 43 business. And I just looked him in the eye and laughed. I'm like, I don't know where you got those numbers. I am 100%. And I knew he thought I was going to say personal. I said, I'm 100% business. Everything I do is strategic, even my personal updates. I'm thinking about how will this position me? How will this influence people to possibly, sign up for something? Obviously being true to myself. So back to this aspect of relationship equity, I'm always on a mission to cultivate deep trust, respect, and to have, I'm not interested in a fickle audience. I'd rather have a smaller audience that's extremely brand loyal. And so, for me in my business field, as and when I do make an offer, I have a paid course or a webinar or something that I'm offering that people can sign up and pay, then I've built up that relationship equity and my audience is extremely receptive.
Fascinating perspective. Thanks for sharing that. I also want to know, what tools you use. This is something I always like to ask all of my guests. What's in their tool stack? Because everyone's got different things that they're using. Some use a lot of tools. Some are like, no, I've got these two tools and this is all I use. What is Mari Smith using to create her empire on Facebook?
Well, yeah, my marketing automation platform of choice is Keep, formerly known as Infusionsoft. I love Lead Pages for doing my landing pages, my opt-ins. I got profiled on Lead Pages blog not long back. On the AI side, I'm using Google Gemini and Perplexity, a little bit of ChatGPT. Now, as of a few days ago, I'm going to be leaning much more into Meta AI.
Yeah.
This isn't necessarily for what I do out in the public, but I just love Fathom, the Fathom note taker, and I've changed the name. It's Mari Smith AI Secretary, and she joins me on every Zoom call, and she summarizes and makes it all easy peasy. I just started dabbling too with that Hey Jen. I know, I'm a little spooked by it, but the ability to create your own avatar, or you can use one of their stock avatars, and the ability to potentially convert some of my courses into different languages, maybe make an avatar version of myself. I know our good friend Molly Mahoney. I saw her doing something with an avatar. She's like, yes, if you notice, I'm a little bit expressionless, or whatever the word she used. She's like, because this is AI me, because I didn't want to get camera ready. And I'm like, ooh, yeah, that appeals to me.
There's so much happening with the AI. There's new tools every single day. I love that you mentioned Fathom. That's something that, again, internally we've been using testing a lot of different note takers. And
Mm.
so it's funny because now we'll join a team meeting and there's like 5 or 6 different AI note takers that are all joining. There's more note takers, it seems like, than participants in the community, because we're all testing different tools to see which one kind of works the best or resonates the most before we, take the plunge and pick one for the team. But one of
Mm.
the topics you mentioned early on that I appreciated was all these different resources that you turn to. And my last question for you
Mm.
is there anything else, any other specific podcasts, newsletters, any other individuals? I know one of the things that we talked about in the green room is that when we're done here, you're going to the Facebook earnings call, which I think is fantastic. I was a trained historian, so going to those primary sources
Mm.
and getting that kind of information, I think, is fantastic. But of course, most social media marketers are not going to attend earnings calls. What other resources do you recommend for them?
Well, for sure, for me personally, I follow Mark Zuckerberg on both Instagram and Facebook, and Threads a little bit, and for sure Adam Mosseri, head of Instagram. Both of them have Instagram broadcast channels, so I don't subscribe to a lot of IG broadcast channels. It's just too much. And so when I see the DM notification, also on Messenger, and I'll see, okay, something's happening. Invariably, it's a piece of news they've shared elsewhere anyway. Zuckerberg seems to do these announcements through Reel. He'll make a Reel, it'll go on Instagram and Facebook. And then certainly Meta's blog. The earnings calls, yeah, they're always an hour long, and they can be kind of heady because you got the investors on there and they're asking questions. And then Zuckerberg started doing this years ago, where the minute he's finished sharing his 10, 12, 15-minute prepared remarks, they get published on his Facebook profile, facebook.com/Zuck. And what I do, Mike, is I literally will copy and paste them, and I go through line by line. I start interpreting and basically integrating all of that into making sense, sense making. And I also work with Meta through a couple of different agencies. And then I mentioned, and so they keep me posted on what's happening. But I know you were asking what resources could other people turn to. I mean, I don't know. Bottom line, I think they should just follow me.
That is actually really great advice. And I love that you mentioned following Zuck, following Adam Mosseri, because that is really true. And folks, you need to understand that's a little bit unique. The other social networks don't necessarily do that. Google Plus, one of the big headaches I had, even though I love the platform, is that every time they had an update, they would pick like some random engineer to share, hey, we just did this on Google Plus. I don't know, this is years ago.
Yeah.
But as someone who was actively writing about social media changes at that time, it was next to impossible to predict where those changes were going to come from. You just had to wait for somebody else to spot it in the wild and say, oh yeah, Ivanovich said that they just released this new feature for circles. Okay. So yeah, follow Adam, follow Mark Zuckerberg, and by all means follow Mari. So tell them, where can they find you? Where can they follow you? Where can they learn more?
Sure thing. Yeah. Facebook is at Mari Smith on my business page. And from there, they can see the group is the Social Scoop is the main one. Instagram, I'm Mari_Smith. And those are the main ones. I do have a YouTube channel, a LinkedIn, and I'm not really doing much with Twitter X or Threads. So, and of course, my website is marismith.com. So thank you so much, Mike.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mari. Folks, that's all we've got for today. I will have all of those links in the show notes just below so that you can follow her and follow all the resources we talked about. And as always, please find us on Apple Podcasts, the Social Pulse Podcast Retail Edition, and leave us a review. We'd love to know what you think. Until next time. Thank you for listening to another episode of Social Pulse Podcast Retail Edition, hosted by Mike Allton and powered by Agorapulse, the #1 rated social media management solution, which you can learn more about at agorapulse.com. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe on your favorite podcast player and be sure to leave us a review. Your feedback is important to us.